We're on location today, and I have Pamela Porter here, a young adult author. We're down here at the Moose Jaw Library Theater. We're here to talk about your latest release, I'll Be Watching. It's kind of based off of small town Saskatchewan. Pamela, I really want to know what prompted you to write a book about small town Saskatchewan, being that you're not exactly from this area.
That's right. Well, we come to Saskatchewan every summer because my husband manages his family's farmland, which is mostly around Weyburn area. And so from BC, we come past here quite a lot. And I was very intrigued with the land south of Moose Jaw. I love Moose Jaw. And the land south and south of Assiniboia, you know, it's kind of hilly there. And there are a number of what people call now ghost towns in Saskatchewan, and a number down there, just those vibrant little towns that used to exist, and they're not there anymore. And sometimes there's nothing but prairie left anymore. So I asked myself the question, what happened to those towns? Right. And as I began to read and do research, I found out some of the answer to that, which had to do with the Dust Bowl, the Depression, and the beginning of World War II, when so many young men, say, like your age, went off to the war in Europe, and when they came home, they didn't come back to their own small towns. The other thing that caused me to write a book about small town Saskatchewan was that a friend of mine told me a story about her father, who had grown up in this area, actually a little bit east of Regina. And it was kind of a long, convoluted story, but the gist of it was that there were 4 children, and their parents died, and the step-parent that was there abandoned them completely at the end of the 30s, or the very beginning of the 40s, and these children scraped away a living on their own for about 2 years. And I wondered, how did you do that? Yeah. And they would have lived in one of those little towns that doesn't exist anymore. So then I started reading and looking up into history, and a whole novel emerged from that. And
you just so happen to have a copy of the novel in your hand. You mentioned the 1930s and 40s. It's because the book is based in that time era. Was it? And the novel is also billed as a novel for young adults. I'm wondering if there's some similarities between the kids who grew up in that era with the ones you're trying to engage with in this era.
I think there always are, and you know, kids these days, ask themselves the same questions, and particularly when they get into high school, you know, their teachers start telling them in a few years they're going to graduate and they're going to have to go out into the world and figure out what to do with themselves. And a lot of kids have no idea how they're going to do that, and it's kind of frightening. And the kids in this book, you know, some of them are younger, and the eldest, you know, goes off to the war in Europe. And at that time, some of those young men were terribly young. You had to be 18, supposedly, to enlist in the RC, Royal Canadian Air Force, and in the military. But as the war kicked up, they accepted younger and younger boys, and some as young as 15 or 16. Wow. And some of the battalions in Europe that I read about, you know, had every one of those members of the battalions were under the age of 18. And I think a lot of young people today don't have it in their minds that that war was fought by and large by teenagers. Yeah. You know, they see old people on TV talking about what they did during the war, and it's easy to think that the war was fought by silver-haired old men. But, you know, they were terribly young when they were in that situation, and showed great courage.
Now, sort of to tie into that, your audience today is obviously going to be young people. When you do speaking engagements like this, what type, you obviously do a little bit of reading from the novel, but what kind of things do you talk about?
Oh, well, I ask them questions. You know, today I'm going to ask them questions about, you know, do they know about, you know, ghost towns in Saskatchewan, and what are some of their names? I mean, there are endless names of, you know, towns in Saskatchewan that no longer exist, except for sometimes a name on a signpost, you know, on a country road. And, you know, what was the Depression? You know, and what was its effect on Saskatchewan? Do they know how terribly Saskatchewan suffered in the 30s, and what did people do back then, and what did the young people do when they were in a little town where even their parents didn't have jobs and they didn't see any future for themselves. It was so exciting and easy to go enlist and go off to Europe and think that you got a free ticket to see the world with no idea of what was going to happen to you.
Pamela, we're a couple minutes away from you actually giving that talk, so I'll let you get to it, but thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.